Ba ba da ba 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 ba. That's right. March Madness is nearly upon us. The NCAA tournament unofficially began on Sunday with the selections for the first round matchups. Selection committee has done its job. And now it is time for Dan Wolken, national NCAA basketball writer for USA Today, to do his job, which is to make us here at Takeline smarter about picking our brackets, about filling out our brackets, and just about informing us about these teams. Because straight up, if there is a hole in my sports knowledge, it is the NCAA basketball that we all love and watch every March. Dan, thank you for joining Takeline.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks for asking. Glad to be here.
So did the selection committee get it right this year? It feels like every year there's like 63 teams that everybody absolutely agrees with. And then there's 5 that everyone is like, what happened? What are your thoughts on what we saw today?
I actually just wrote a column about this that you guys can check out at usatoday.com. And I think the biggest problem with the committee is they just don't have a lot of time. All of these results come in Saturday night, Sunday, and they are facing a 6 p.m. Eastern deadline to get this bracket out to CBS so that they can put it on television before 60 Minutes starts every single year. And there's just a lot of moving parts, and they screw up some things. Most of the time, they get the right teams, although I think this year Texas A&M was a mistake. I would have had A&M in. They did not put them in. I thought A&M played really well in the SEC tournament. They beat Auburn. They beat Arkansas, 2 very highly seeded teams. I would have had A&M in. I think the biggest issue is seeding. You know, typically, yeah, you can make an argument one way or the other about 1 or 2 teams at the very bottom of the bracket. But I think they just mess up the seeding way too often. Just as an example, Tennessee, they got seeded number 3 in the South region. But most of the pundits and prognosticators, especially after this SEC tournament run that Tennessee was on, had them not just as a number 2 seed, but maybe even the strongest number 2.
Interesting.
And it just looks lazy on the part of the committee that they don't really account for what happens in these conference tournaments, and they do it every single year. I get it. They're pressed for time. And you move one team around in a bracket, that can cascade into all these other moves you got to make. So I understand why these mistakes get made, but I just sort of wish they had more time to really go back and scrub all these seeds and make sure they're really getting it right.
Process-wise, you'd think that an organization that is raking in the bucks every single year would figure out a way to just kind of like beef up this little kink in the process up, but that's fine. So our number 1 seeds are Gonzaga, Baylor, Arizona, and Kansas. Any thoughts there about who might be overrated, underrated, and their paths to the Final Four potentially?
Yeah, I think as far as the number 1 seeds, they pretty much got them right. It's fairly obvious that those 4 were deserving just based on the overall body of work. I think the biggest red flag with any of the number 1 seeds is that Baylor's had some injuries, particularly Jonathan Tchamwa-Tchatcha, who was such a huge part of their national championship team last year. Just such a hardworking player who really gave them such a great identity, especially on defense. And he's out, and they have not been quite as good since his injury. Baylor's still really good. You know, it's not like he was their best scorer or anything like that, but he just really gave them that a kind of physical edge. And really, you know, 5%, 10% of their defense, I thought, was just sort of his energy. So Baylor, I think, is probably the most vulnerable just due to injuries. I think Kansas is really solid, and I thought they got a great draw, to be honest with you. Arizona, you can't argue with what they've done this season, 31-3. I think they're the most complete team. And then Gonzaga, maybe not quite as dominant as they were last season, but they're awesome, and you can't argue with them. So really, it's that Baylor region where you look at them and say, are they vulnerable to maybe getting upset somewhere early?
How many of your family and friends ask you to help fill out their bracket every year?
Well, I'm not good at it. That's the problem. Is
no one's good at it. Here's the thing.
Right.
No one's good at it. No one's actually good at it, right? But I would imagine Listen, if we were homies, I would be up in your text messages around this time every single year, be like, Dan, help a guy out.
Well, here's the thing: is just as far as strategy, take the specific teams out of it. You're probably better off most of the time going with favorites, and then when you do want to pick upsets with teams that you don't think are going very far anyway.
Mm.
In other words, like just as an example, Houston's a number 5 seed. I don't think they're really going very far in this tournament. I just don't think they have enough scoring to advance to the second weekend. So I'm going to pick UAB to beat them as a 12 seed over a 5 seed, because even if that pick doesn't work out for me, I think Houston's losing in the next round to Illinois anyway. So those are the kinds of strategic upsets you probably want to pick in the bracket. But yeah, like this thing is so crazy. I was there in the building when UMBC upset Virginia. I mean, this is not a joke. I was literally like on Yelp looking at where to go have dinner that night and just like getting out of the arena early because, yeah, oh, come on, Virginia's not losing to UMBC. And then all of a sudden you look up 10 minutes into the game and you're kind of going, And then at halftime, And then as the thing goes on, you're like, holy crap, I'm about to cover the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history. So that's just the way this tournament goes. Like you just can't predict some of these results.
This will be Coach Mike Krzyzewski's final NCAA tournament. This comes on the heels of some really disheartening losses, including one to an absolutely ebullient North Carolina team. Any reason to think that this team in its current form can make a run, especially if they manage to get past the stomach virus issues that seem to have been plaguing them in recent days?
The more I've watched of Duke lately, the less I've liked, to be honest with you. They first of all, they're young, and that's not always a great formula to have in the NCAA tournament. Paolo's a really good player, and they do have some dudes who are going to play in the NBA on their team, but they don't really seem to be handling the pressure of this whole thing very well, of trying to get Mike Krzyzewski some of these big wins as he winds down his career. They did not play well against Carolina. I didn't think they played very well in the ACC tournament, even though they did get to the final. I think what's helping them here is their draw in the first weekend, I think, is pretty manageable. Like they're not going to have any problem with Cal State Fullerton. Then in the second round, they play Michigan State or Davidson, two really good coaches, obviously, but I don't think this is a very good Michigan State team. So I've got Duke getting to the Sweet 16, but that's where it gets interesting because, if they end up playing Texas Tech in the Sweet 16, that's just a really physical team that just guards the hell out of you. And I'm not sure that's a great matchup for a very young Duke team. So I could see them losing in the Sweet 16. I don't see a path for them necessarily making the Final Four because you've got on the top half of that bracket, Gonzaga, you've got Arkansas. I just think that's a lot for them to get through.
Takeline is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Shouts to my guy, Calvin Ridley. I want to tell you about the easiest and most fun way to spice up your season. It's blowing your NFL career, playing fantasy football and or basketball or betting on March Madness through an app. It's Underdog Fantasy and their brand new pick'em game. Just pick over or under on your favorite or least favorite player stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players, and you can take home some serious cash. Use code TAKELINE and get your first deposit doubled by Underdog. Sign up now with the code TAKELINE, and you'll double your first deposit up to $100 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit of $10, just $10 or more. Deposit 100, get 100 for free. You mentioned Arizona as one of the strongest, if not the strongest, most well-rounded team in the tournament, and that the Pac12 championship game between UCLA and Arizona is a possible championship preview. Pac-12 is that's the NCAA that I know. I love having the games on Saturday night. I love Jaquez and Juzang. What are you seeing there with those two teams?
UCLA is really interesting to me because they obviously made this great run last year to the Final Four. It was electric what they were able to put together, kind of coming out of nowhere. And then they bring everybody back, and there's all these expectations on them. And you kind of get the sense just listening to Mick Cronin that he kind of felt like they BS'd their way through the regular season. That they just kind of like, yeah, we're the dudes who made the Final Four last year, whatever. That they didn't really always play hard. They didn't really, go after it like maybe he wanted them to all the time. But I still think there's a switch for them to flip here, and they've started to maybe do it a little bit more late in the season. I thought the Pac-12 championship game was great. I just thought the execution on both sides was really, really good. And to me, that just looked like a very high level of basketball. And I like UCLA's draw. I mean, Akron in the first round shouldn't be a problem. St. Mary's potentially in the second round, should win that one. They're in the Baylor part of the bracket, so I think they got a great chance to beat Baylor. And then in the Elite Eight, you're probably playing either Kentucky or Purdue. Very winnable games. Kentucky's good, no doubt about it. Different kind of Kentucky team. But I do like UCLA getting through and getting to the Final Four again. And then as far as Arizona, I mean, you just sort of look at them and, you've got Benedict Mathurin, who's an unbelievable player, going to play a long time in the NBA, can create so many shots off the dribble. They've got shooters on the wings. They've got two traditional bigs who can score around the rim. They've got lineup versatility. The one thing that is maybe a little bit of a concern is Kirk Kriisa has got a sprained ankle that he got in the Pac-12 tournament. You hope that it's not serious and that he can be 100%, especially by the second weekend. I mean, they're 31-3 this year. They've been awesome from beginning of the season to the end. So I like both of those teams in the Final Four. I really do.
What happened to the ACC this year? Yeah. Is it just cyclical? Is it just you've got some legendary coaches nearing the end of the run, and just the cards falling in weird ways for other teams? Like, what happened? This is usually the power conference: Maryland, North Carolina, Duke, etc., Syracuse. What happened?
Yeah, I think just some of these top programs are in transition right now. North Carolina, Roy Williams retires after last season, hands it over to Hubert Davis. They've been okay. I mean, they're in as a 9 seed, as an 8 seed this year, which is about where they belong. Kind of underwhelming. You've got Syracuse, which just kind of continues to nosedive as Jim Boeheim gets really, really old. And this was a bad season. I mean, this was a bad Syracuse season. Louisville's a mess. Ever since the FBI scandal and Pitino getting taken down, they made a hire in Chris Mack that just didn't work out. So they're looking for a new coach. I mean, you've got a couple programs that are just kind of stuck in the middle, like, Clemson. And this was a bad Florida State year. Florida State's usually really good. Just didn't have it this year. So I don't know. Like, the ACC on paper should be the best conference when you've got that many big time elite blue blood programs who want to be good, who invest a ton of money in basketball. But this is just a little bit of a weird transition time. And the ACC just was flat out bad this year.
Any predictions as we bring this segment to a close? And we've learned so much from you, Dan. And now I'm going to do the thing that I said I would do if I was your friend, and which is to ask you for some predictions. What are your predictions, if you have any, Dan?
I'm going to go with a big one here to start off. First round, Jacksonville State. I've got upsetting number 2 seed Auburn in the first round. And here's why. Auburn has been awful away from home this year. Terrible away from home. They're like world beaters in Auburn. Everywhere else, they're pretty average. Jacksonville State is actually in Alabama. A lot of people may not know that. So it's kind of an in-state game, and they're really interesting offensively. They shoot a ton of threes. This is not typically like Bruce Pearl's teams kind of play freewheeling and shoot a lot of threes. This Auburn team does not shoot it very well. I like Jacksonville State to pull a little bit of an upset, or not a little bit, a massive upset there. So I'm picking that. And again, I'm going back with my theory. I don't think Auburn's going very far anyway. So why not? I have UAB over Houston. I think I mentioned that earlier. I've got New Mexico State over UConn as a 12-5 upset. Everybody loves those 12-5 upsets. New Mexico State's one of those programs. They're good every year out in the WAC, and they kind of dominate out there. And they always have a couple really interesting players. And UConn's a little bit of a wild card team, and they kind of take on the personality of their coach Danny Hurley, he runs really, really hot. And I don't love that for the NCAA tournament. Like, I think you kind of need a little bit more even keel guy on the sidelines. Or these games get really long, and the timeouts are long, and I just kind of feel like he's going to kind of blow up. So I like New Mexico State. I've got Arkansas in the Final Four in the Gonzaga region. I think they're going to beat Gonzaga straight up. I think they're going to make the Final Four. I think they've been one of the hottest teams in the country down the stretch of the season. Didn't play great in the SEC tournament, but I don't care about that because I just don't think these conference tournaments matter very much. So I really think Arkansas's got a shot. And I've got two Pac-12 teams, UCLA and Arizona. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I do think Kansas makes the Final Four.
Well, my brain just gained 5 pounds because I got that much smarter listening to USA Today National NCAA basketball writer Dan Wolken. Dan, plug anything you got right now. Where can people find your stuff?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, if all these predictions are wrong, please erase it from the internet. Like it never happened.
That will immediately happen. I will make sure. I'm trying to, Zuri, Ryan, make sure we erase everything if Dan is wrong.
And just check out usatoday.com. Get a subscription. You can get all my content, everybody who works for us, all my great colleagues. We'll be covering the tournament like crazy over the next few weeks.
Dan, thank you again for joining us. Have a great one.
No, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.